Grab a cup of joe, buckle up, and let's embark on a journey of self-discovery, creativity, and entrepreneurship. Let's get rolling. All right, welcome back to the Rhythm of the Road podcast. I have a really special guest joining the podcast in our conversation today, Josh from way across the pond. And actually, as we're recording this, he's doing it from a whole different day than what I'm currently sitting in, because he's on a Thursday morning. I'm on a Wednesday evening. I have a good friend whose also name is Jeremy, who always sends me a happy birthday message an entire day before everyone else, because legitimately it hits him that day earlier. So it's always fun to get that. And Australia is a place that is on my bucket list to go and be. So I'm really grateful for our conversation today. Josh, why don't you just share a little bit about you, and we'll take it from there.
Well, firstly, thank you. I am, as a dual citizen of America and Australia and England, I've actually had 2 birthdays every year for a long, long time now, and it's always fun because you just get that second round of happy birthday messages, and yeah, it's very special. That's
amazing. So, Josh, I learned a little bit about you, just kind of doing some research and kind of having, taken from the music background. So you've done the touring piece, you've done the live musician piece. And then I would imagine that as you were in that creative space, you started to learn some things about maybe what does the music industry need differently and better? Where can I really make an impact, whether it's musically, or is there something else? And it seems that definitely. You took something else.
For sure. I think what I saw were, to your point, maybe holes in the industry or areas for room for improvement, things that could be better, and where technology had an opportunity to streamline things, specifically networking. But I think too, my non-linear career, because it's not, I guess no two careers are the same, but anyone who feels like looking at my Wikipedia, it's strange in that things happen in bursts, and there's big tours with big artists, and then there's years of relative quietness and long gaps between releases for an early stage artist. It wasn't a conventional career, and that I think actually is what paved the way for me doing what I do now, which is I did have quite a bit of breathing room between, let's call them milestone moments. And in those sort of moments of reflection, I wasn't sitting around twiddling my thumbs. I was building tools for the music industry. I was, networking globally and working out, kind of the lay of the land, but also what I had to offer, and executing ultimately. And so what that looks like today is a portfolio of brands and companies that help connect the music ecosystem, connect fans with content, connect creators with fellow creators or with an audience, marketing tools, tools that help people who own rights to songs either monetize or better administer their online profiles and get their information correct. So that there's a lot of things that that have come as a result of doing the hard yakka as a performer and as a songwriter before that, but it's all sort of led to this point.
I think that's great. I found kind of, I was thinking, and even as I hear you talk about that journey a bit, I kind of hear these 3 central points, is this idea of creating and connecting and then collecting. And clearly as musicians, we're always reaching for that collecting space in whatever version that looks like. And I even heard you identify some of those pieces in there, whether it's in that monetization space, because there are multiple opportunities to do that.
Well, what you just described there is kind of the flywheel. If you think about it, you have to create, a product to even be a sort of participant. If you're starting on the creator side of things, usually you're going to have to connect and collaborate with someone. That can come before the creation part, or it can come afterwards, probably both, because the people that you're going to connect with initially might be fellow songwriters or a producer to realize a vision, but then it's going to be on the other side of the creation process, a graphic designer to do your cover art, and a mastering engineer to master the record, and a distributor to take it to market, and a promoter to get you your first live gig, and and so on, and the list keeps going. There's like 30 odd people that an early stage musician's going to have to ultimately meet, and just to get themselves in the position of saying, I'm in this industry. And so that's, and that's like the first two steps kind of commingled. And then collect is, I guess the third piece. When you've got a product that's out there, you have collaborated with someone, you have created product, then ultimately you're giving it to an audience. And the interesting thing about the music industry is the creator is also the audience. So you can be both a creator and a fan. In fact, that's almost always the case. So there's sort of three parts of that flywheel that you've got to service and that need to work in order for there to be an industry, and that's probably bordering on business speak, but it's such an important thing to understand. And most musicians, most creatives for that matter, are small businesses, but they sort of typically, and this is generalizing, but it is broadly speaking true, fail to understand that until probably it's too late and perhaps they've tapped out and moved on to a more conventional career path. So I feel also a part of what I do and what we do is, and what we attempt to do, I don't think we do a great job of this yet, but we're trying, is to educate folks on that fact, and to help them take it a little bit more seriously and treat it like a business, because that's going to benefit the individual, and it's also going to benefit the entire music ecosystem if everyone operated like that. So it's a big, bold mission, I suppose, to try and formalize some of those things. But it's a huge market, and you've got hundreds of millions of people who participate on the creation side. As creator tools become proliferate, and AI tools in particular sort of turn everyone into creators, that hundreds of millions will possibly turn into, small billions. Of people who are creating content and pushing it out. Not that I like talking about music as content, but to a degree it is. And then you've got billions again of fans consuming it. So it's such a large industry, and it deserves to be legitimized and formalized and treated more like a business, in the same way that a plumber would treat their business like a business, and a small franchise owner treats, what they do very seriously. I think the industry would benefit if every musician did the same.
I resonate with all of those things. You're making my heart smile. Seriously. Because I talk a lot about that. And when folks are reaching out to me, asking me questions, I'm always encouraging them to learn the business piece of it.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, then you're saying you don't want whatever you think is coming next.
That's right.
And I'm not, and that's not a bad thing. That's just,
no.
I mean, I think we need to hear that too. But more importantly, what I'm usually trying
then it's just a hobby. Then it's just a hobby. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's a really healthy thing. It's really important that people have hobbies that aren't necessarily commercially aligned with your well-being, because
it's a wonderful way to put it.
Keep you sane. But working that out is probably something that you should do fairly early on.
Yes. And I appreciate both. Like,
yeah, for sure.
And when they can identify it, and that's really what I want them to do. Just decide, like, this is what I want to do because it brings me life. It brings me joy. It can be a hobby, and it doesn't have to be my stress.
Yeah.
It should be and then recognize and own that.
I dropped out of school when I was 17 to make a feature film, because I love making like short films growing up. It was like, I was obsessed the minute I could get my hands on a camera as a kid, and we're talking like old tape cameras, I was making clips. And then I think around the age of 15 or 16, I was accelerated through like media school and made a short film that won some awards and got acquired by the state here in Victoria. And that gave me the confidence and bravado to kind of go, I can make a feature film at the tender age of 17. And I did it, but it killed my love for film. So I made the film and we got it out there, but it really it was a masterclass in business at such a formative age, but it was probably a bit too much to handle also at that age. But it killed. But the point I'm making though is it killed my love for something that was burgeoning or blossoming, and I was always really afraid to do that with music. So when I dipped my toe into music quite a few years after that, like 4 or 5 years later, I did it where I still was able to sit down at the piano and play, not because I needed to write the next song to make me some money, but I could still enjoy it. And I had to be quite conscious and mindful not to fuck that up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's probably why I've ended up on the business side of it, because even though I had a really good run on the other side of the table, and I still do, like I got to play this Coldplay tour last year, which was amazing. So I still get to do treats every now and then, but I still try and I think that's probably why I'm on that business side of the fence, because that is different. And it means that I can still sit at the piano and just do it for relaxation.
Right. And that's what I'm entering more of that space of being able to transition less out of being out on the road and more being in the business space, so that I can just still go out on the road. And I love how you put that. Like, I just get these treats and I get this opportunity to just go out and like fill me up for a minute, but then it can stay there and I can come back here. And
it is a bucket. I'm not great with recounting analogies. I hear a lot of good ones and I don't spit them out very eloquently, but I think, like touring and or co-writing with someone who's really, you look up to, whatever. A lot of this stuff is like filling up the bucket type stuff.
Yeah.
But learning when to go back to it and when to sip from it and all that, that's a real art. You must that, I think, as you get a bit older.
Yeah. And I think you have to have that and try that and do those different versions because you appreciate it differently.
Yeah.
I like to use later in life rather than older, because
that's nice.
We're still musicians, so I still feel like a kid most of the time.
Totally.
So I heard you talk about a big mission, and that's a big undertaking. And, and I know just kind of based on our conversation a bit, it's not like you're like, I own this whole mission together. Like, I feel like you're reaching across the globe and trying to connect folks with this mission.
I think a well-defined mission is one that others can get on board with. It's not selfish. It's not if we win, our shareholders win, and that's sort of the end of the story. It's like, it's so much bigger than that. It's, I think, a proper mission that people can really get behind and that has legs, like decades worth of legs, is one that other companies should also get behind. I'll give a really practical example with our business. Vamper started as a private company in America, and then I sold it to, I built it up for about 8 years in Los Angeles, and then moved back to Australia, sold it to a publicly listed company here in Australia called Jackster, that was tackling a similar problem to Vamper, which is like this social networking in the music world, basically. And so we brought the things together. I took over that business, and very quickly we sort of realized a few things. It was a portfolio company. It was no longer just a single sort of product or idea. There was quite a few things. There was another thing under it called vinyl.com. So we rebranded it as Vinyl Group. But we also sort of looked at what do we have here? Like, what are the pieces that we have to go out and grow? And we had this public company that's very small, but it was also Australia's only music public company. And this, back on this point of sort of missions and stuff, this is probably a smaller mission. It's not the main one. But Australia's got one of the best music ecosystems in the world. It produces incredible talent. It's got one of the best, I think, if not the most vibrant live scene anywhere, particularly in Melbourne. But it's got two great, music capitals in Melbourne and Sydney. It's got its own set of challenges. Breaking local artists to the local market is surprisingly hard. Establishing music companies that can keep their doors open. I worked for the biggest music retailer, a company called Allen's Billy Hyde, and even that had to shut its doors in the late 2010s just because, retail was moving online. And so there's just all these challenges to every little part of the industry, not just recorded music, but instruments and then obviously retail for consumption and et cetera, et cetera. And here we are, this small little battler that's Australia's only, listed music company. And so I thought success for us would be inspiring other music companies to start up in Australia, to domicile in Australia, and to try and have the ambition to go public. That's an example of like a mission that's only successful when other people are successful. So I know that was a long story, but my point there was that sometimes success actually means, needing competition to come in, needing other people to win, needing other people to be successful. That's our success. And so I would extend that to that broader mission. We're talking about educating musicians and all of that. We're not going to achieve that on our own, but if we lead the way and if we do it and show that it can be profitable, but show that it can be fun and show that it can be kind of cool and not so laborious, that looks like winning, and other people will copy that, and good, as they should.
Yeah. It's that idea, or, Zig Ziglar, his quote around like, if you help everyone else get what they want, you'll have everything you could ever want.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, I subscribe to that.
Yeah. And it's not because of the want, it's because of the service. It's because of the building up those other folks and helping them rise, because you're doing it together. And that competition, that's healthy.
It doesn't make you very popular, though. I will say, tackling anything lofty, especially in a country like Australia, we have this thing called tall poppy syndrome, and it's real. I've left Australia like 3 times. It keeps bringing me back because the weather and the houses are very lovely, but and the people. But we have this cultural thing where anyone who's trying to sort of achieve big, audacious, hairy goals like we are, not everyone else is a fan of that. So I describe myself sometimes as Marmite, which is like Vegemite, this bread that we put on toast, which is unique because half the people love it and half the people hate it. And so we've got this, I think, quite noble mission and want to do good in the world. But someone's always coming for me or the business. And, you do, again, I won't use older, but as we get along in life, you develop a thicker skin and you get quite used to it. But it's such an unfortunate side effect of trying to do positive, not to moan and complain, but it's just an observation and something quite unique to Australia as well.
And as you're traveling and you're in those different areas, like, I loved hearing that, and because I've always heard, however, now having firsthand, that the music scene, especially live, is so vibrant. Yeah. Where here in the U.S., we're seeing such a decline, which is, and yet, it's what everybody wants, like as a consumer's want. But
I was in Austin, a few months ago for South by Southwest, and it was my first time in Austin. It seemed very healthy. Like every single bar had live music, and I met people even on the plane, just people sitting next to me between LA and Austin, and even on the international leg over. So many people were gravitating, so many musicians were gravitating specifically to do showcases, not just one, but 5. And that was so cool to see. But I can't comment on broadly, broader trends. If you say that it's, in a bit of a state of decline, that's a shame. The thing that always blew my mind about America in a really positive way was the cost of instruments is a lot lower, which actually really helps, I think, produce a more vibrant scene because the barrier to entry is lower. Yeah. And that's because manufacturing, either happens in Mexico or America. And so it's just cheaper. It's not going on planes and ships and all that around the world. And then secondly, and something that we're very jealous of here in Australia, is you can go on tour in America and typically every 3 or 4 hours, the bus stops, not just to refuel, but in a town that has enough of a population that you might play a show. In Australia, the bus got to keep driving for 12 hours at a minimum. That's the shortest distance between our major cities. There's some that are 5-6 days apart. And that's what makes touring here very expensive, because to pay for the petrol between those stops, if you're taking a bus or even if you're flying, there's less places to cover that bill. And so the cost of touring is almost never profitable on its own for young bands. It's different for singer-songwriters and solo artists, and it's different for people later stages of their career. But for most folks, it's really quite prohibitive just because you don't have as many cities and states that you do in America, because I think for listeners who aren't familiar with Australia, we have nothing in the middle of the country. So we've got this beautiful coastline where about 90% of the population lives around that coastline. And then you've got the middle of the country, which is about the same size as America, but there's just nothing there. It's just dirt. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Hence all those long
Yes.
rides. So, Josh, what is your company doing? Because you have that kind of collect piece, and you have the digital side of things, and giving folks an opportunity to reach fans differently. How have you seen that growth, and where do you see the most amount of impact for musicians?
Yeah, so we have our vinyl.com store, which is just a retail experience. I say just, it's a good retail experience, and it's growing. So it started off as just selling vinyl records, and we've added CDs and some merchandise and other knickknacks, let's call them. And we're trying to expand that catalog all the time. But probably one of the more interesting things that we've done to directly answer your question is we purchased a UK company called Serenade late last year. They do sort of digital physical collections that blur the lines a little bit between what's something that's physically unique that I can hold in my hand and look at and know that it's one of 100 or one of 500 or however limited it is, but also have some digital activation as a result of it, which does a couple of things. Number one, the way that we've worked it and geared it, it becomes a chart eligible product. So artists get really excited, like major artists get really excited about it because they can sell it on their D2C channels or they can sell it at shows. It's going to count towards their physical chart result, which is, everyone's always chasing that, right? Because it's more profitable, and it counts for more when they do the algorithm of what gets someone up there in the charts.
Yep.
So artists get really excited by it. And look, the founder of that business spent years trying to probably work out exactly what the right model was. Did they sell it on their own website, or did artists buy it from us? And where we've landed is it's a B2C product. So that means as a company, we're actually just approaching the labels and the managers and the artists, and we're getting them excited. They're buying a run of, say, 500, whatever it is that they want to produce. We make it possible. We run it through our systems and all that. And then they sell it on their own channels. And that we found that's the most effective way to bring effectively a new physical consumption format to market. And it's really fun because it's kind of bleeding edge is probably too hyperbolic, but it's pushing the boundaries on what it means to be a physical product, and what you can do with that, and how you can, we've got these stickers that we put on things so people can tap their phones on the, it might be a little miniature cassette, but they can tap their phone on it and it starts playing on their phone. So there's all kinds of like really interesting, cool things that we're building there. It's a real kind of geek shop for music fans.
And it sounds to me, based on that you're probably the audience is those that have expendable income that would do something like that, because it might not just be, we're not selling CDs anymore, which is where artists could actually make money. And they needed a new resource for that. And I'm not going to get into the streaming space because we know how that plays out.
I don't think fans ever stopped wanting to own something. That's why vinyl sales kept going back up. And that's why cassette sales are back up. And that's why CD sales are up, because there's something about, I still buy occasionally, like for acts I really love, a CD, or a signed copy or something limited edition. I don't even own anything to play it on. This is not about, and I think something like 51% of people who own vinyls don't own a player. I, of course, own several, but the point I was making is that I understand the phenomenon of buying something from an artist that you love just for the sake of owning it, because it's precious and it's special, and you can touch it and you can pull out those liner notes and you can read it, in the room. It's something really intimate about it, and it's tapping into that is really almost at the essence of everything we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think holding that and touching that, and I'm starting to build a vinyl collection, and mostly for exactly what you said. Like, I want to touch it. I want to feel it. I want to read it. I do actually have a player. It's not great, but it is a player, and it.
When I became the CEO of this company a few years ago, I thought I had a player, but a very bad one. I was like, I can't be the CEO of a company called Vinyl Group and a website called vinyl.com and not own a very, at least nice looking player. And it's got to be the center of my house if people come over. So I spent a bit of money upgrading, but I was at the same time, my folks were moving house and they had this crazy 2000 vinyl collection, like 2000 records, thereabouts. And all the classics from the 70s, Diana Ross,
Wow.
original Elton John's, Toto's, like all really cool stuff. And they had nowhere for it in their new place. So I inherited a really valuable collection and I didn't have to do anything.
That
So
sounds
I'm very
like
fortunate.
a wonderful full weekend of enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, now, like, you could pull anything out and it's almost guaranteed to be a classic. And so we do on a Saturday or Sunday, if we're not doing anything, if we're just lounging around at home, we'll just pull out a random record, put it on, and just let it play in the background. It's lovely.
Yeah, and it's a whole different experience. I remember the first vinyl I heard was the Miles Davis Kind of Blue record, and I've heard that record a 1,000 times.
Yeah,
and it was like I had never heard it before, and so like I know what a different experience that is.
Yeah, that warmth, that harmonic distortion.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
So, what's next? Where are you? Where's Vinyl Group headed next? And where can people find and take advantage of that? Because it's worldwide.
Yes,
not just in Australia.
No, in fact, America's our largest audience. Almost everything that we do, we own about 8 companies now, but on most of the things that we do, America's our largest market by quite a margin. But look, what's next? We're a public company, so we can never truly talk about exactly what's coming next. But
Respect.
what we can say is that our mission for this year, I think, is pretty set in stone. We got very busy last year and bought 4 or 5 companies, and this year's really about making that work. So for folks who have any interest at all in what buying and selling companies looks like, it's called M&A, mergers and acquisitions. And historically, the success rate of M&A is quite low, and nailing integrations, which is when you putting two companies together, and trying to get everyone to play happy and make sure that you keep revenues and unlock profit opportunities and that all sounds it sounds complex, but it's really tricky to do that right. So we've done it. We've got 5 of them to make work. So this year for us is just about getting that right, unlocking the potential before we, maybe go out and start looking at things again. So that's probably a clue at what, the next sort of 6 to 12 months looks like. As far as where you can find anything, our group site is just vinyl.group. And that website has links to everything that we do. And as you mentioned, and we've touched on, we sort of separate what our services into 3 broad categories. So you've got the sites that help you collect. So that's a great place for fans to get, immersed in our world, which is our vinyl.com store and Serenade. You've got the media piece. So we've got the banner there, Create, but really that's about experiences for fans. So we've got Rolling Stone Australia, some music trade websites like the Music Network, Tone Deaf. So sites that, that's more Australian focused, our media business actually, but certainly some mastheads in there that folks will be familiar with. And then at the top, we've got Connect, which is our music tech platforms that really help people in the music ecosystem connect with each other and hopefully helps them achieve what they're trying to achieve in music. So that's Vamper and Jackster. So I encourage anyone who's remotely interested in music to check our site out, because there will be something on there that's relevant to you.
Yeah. Well, and you even have me excited because the mergers and acquisitions piece, that sounds exciting to me. So I want to check back in 6 or 7 months and see how that process actually went.
100%.
Probably off of line so that, you can make sure that you're protected and all those things. And first, I want to say thank you for taking the lead and taking the music industry somewhere, and wherever that's headed next, you're leading the charge, and you're giving, let's call it, the masses of musicians, right? So the startup through the kind of middle career, an opportunity that maybe they haven't had before. So if you are watching this, if you are listening to this, please go check out all of Vinyl Group's resources, because there are a ton of them out there. In my just very surface level searching, they're all now shortcutted in my browser, so I'll be going back to them on a regular basis, mostly because I want to stay informed, and there might be some tools in there for myself. So Josh, any last words for listeners or my audience?
Oh, thank you for listening, and hopefully one of our services or more can be helpful in your music journey. Wonderful.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time. I take, it's morning there, so hopefully you're through some coffee already, and enjoy the rest of your day.
I had to stop drinking coffee. I was getting too reliant on it, so I had to taper it off a little bit.
Oh, I don't know what that means. It doesn't really compute in my brain.
It took a long time to pull it off. I'll say that.
Respect for that then. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. If you are interested in anything that Josh and his companies are doing, please reach out. Please make sure to check out. They're on all of the socials. We'll make sure that you have links down below in our show notes so that you can find the Vinyl Group and all of the pieces and ways Josh and his companies are supporting the music industry. And I want to thank you all for listening. If you found value in this, share it with one other person, because it's that one share that makes that impact. And I appreciate you, and I'll see you all down the road.
Thanks for cruising with me on this episode of Rhythm of the Road. Remember, the journey itself is the destination. Until next time, keep the rhythm flowing, and we'll see you down the road.